Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, Abby. I would love for you to share with the audience just who you are and what your story is.
My name is Abbey Rose, and I am the spiritual accountant. Usually, when I say that, people are like intrigued. They're like, hang on a second, spiritual accountant? What is that? Because let's face it, it's definitely not traditional accounting. I definitely don't look like a traditional accountant, and I certainly don't act like one either. But the number one question that I do get asked is, Abby, are you really an accountant? And to give a bit of context and to just go a little bit into my backstory, I actually started in accounting when I was 19. So my first job in accounting was when I was 19 in my hometown, small hometown in Australia, country town, a lot of farmers, beef cattle farmers, sugarcane farmers. And I actually fell in love with the numbers and the data and preparing financials. I went on to study and I completed a diploma of accounting. And then I went on further and I enrolled into university, into the Bachelor of Business with accounting. And then I was off and away and committed to a career devoting my life to accounting. I started in public practice accounting, that's taxes, tax compliance, and I worked my way up the ranks. And I was working in public practice for a number of years, and it was cubicle life. I had my little cubicle and my little computer, and I was just like drilling away on tax compliance. And for me personally, I really wanted to help businesses, right? Because let's face it, getting your taxes done is probably one of the most least favorable tasks. It's like we just have this expectation of financial compliance that we have to abide by. So every year, the client would come and see me, and I just wanted to be a little ray of sunshine in their life. I know you don't like coming to see me, but if I can at least make this as enjoyable, I won't be the least favorite person for you. So I really loved that. But I very quickly felt like constrained by it as well. And I'm ambitious and I just wanted to spread my wings. And I just went on then and left public practice whilst I finished my degree and I went out and started my own business. When you move from employee to business, that is a huge leap. And it's one that is very testing because you're no longer just showing up to do a job, you're now like responsible. You're responsible for the job, you're responsible for the work. But I actually loved it because I was out on the road driving around, seeing clients and helping them. And I eventually grew that business into an accounting practice. And I had staff and I had tax agents and BAS agents. I had built like the dream, the success. Now, I was working towards all my licenses and registrations because I didn't have them. I had some, I had my memberships, I had years of professional practice and then experience in the field. It was like I was at the 11th hour. I was two subjects shy of finishing all of my study so I could get that final certificate on the wall, that stamp of approval to say, hey, you can do this. And my whole life crumbled. Everything fell away. I walked out of a CFO role because there was embezzlement and I just couldn't participate in that. My accounting practice completely crumbled. My business relationships and associations just broke down, and my husband walked out on me. So I had my two children at the time. My daughter, she was two, my son was one. I literally had every area of my life completely upheavaled. And because it was so jolting, I literally didn't have the mental capacity to continue studying. I pulled the pin, two subjects shy. And because of the position that I was in, the financial position that I was in, I was then faced with a decision over whether or not I would file for bankruptcy. And here in Australia, if you're an accountant and you go bankrupt, they actually strip you of all your licenses and registrations anyway. So I was facing this decision of literally everything being stripped. My family, my children, my career, my professional accreditations. And there was just this really magical moment when, well, I say magical now, but it didn't quite feel magical at the time. It was very painful. But there was this moment where I was in complete despair. And it was like I heard a voice outside of myself. And that voice just said trust. And there was just like a knowing that kind of washed over me. And it was like, everything's going to be fine. I left public practice, I left accounting, and I went on a massive spiritual awakening. And with that, it was a lot of emotional healing. It was a lot of like, I literally woke up. I call that my awakening, a dark night of the soul. I went from asleep in the system, NPC, doing taxes, to awake brutally. And now it's like, whoa. And then because of that, I made the decision to file the bankruptcy myself. I didn't want anyone else to do it. I took responsibility for that. And it was through the process of bankruptcy, I then woke up to some truths. And I then started a journey of learning the truth about our financial world and our economy, learning the truth about taxes, learning the truth about money and how our world operates and functions in commerce. And it was like I was innocently indoctrinated all of those years, right up until the 11th hour, to learn the system, to then completely unlearn it and learn a whole different way of business, a whole different way of money, a whole different way of showing up, a whole different way of even the debt mentality. Yeah, the debt mentality that people have. So now I devote my life to sharing those truths, sharing that education, and really, I guess, I see myself as someone as like a guide for people to step into what humanity actually need right now. Because I think it's safe to say, whether you're in Canada, you're in the US, you're in Europe, you're in Australia, you're in New Zealand, it doesn't matter where you are in this world, if you look out and you're looking out and seeing what's happening in the world right now, I think it's safe to say that we can all say things are a little bit messy. Just a little bit
Just a
messy,
little bit.
just a little bit. So I just want to help empower people because that mess out there, it has to happen because we are the ones that are going to step forward and make change in this world. And I'm already seeing this change and it's exciting, right? And okay, we have some problems. Be aware of the problems. Don't focus on the problems. Let's be part of the solution. I just really love to share the message and the truth and help people on their financial journey to realize where the power truly lies.
Yeah. So many ways that we can take this conversation here together today. But I feel like the name is in the title of the podcast, money. So let's take it there. What truths did you wake up to on what, say, you believed about money prior to the way you look at money now?
I guess in the spiritual or conscious spaces, there's a lot of people that will say, money is energy. You've got to align to the frequency of money and allow the flow of money and treat money like it's your partner. You got to love money. I love money. Money loves me. And whilst that was a really great stepping stone for evolution, and I don't discredit that because I think there's an element where we need to attach to some value and to some worth, but there gets a point where you have to learn the truth about money and realize that when you're outsourcing your power to money like that, you're actually tapped into a false matrix and you're only going to get so far. When I did my deep dives into the Australian economy, and I think that it's safe to say that what is happening here is the same as what happens in every country, right? If you look, there is a national debt clock here in Australia. There's also a world debt clock, and I'm sure there would be a Canadian debt clock as well if you search for it, right? So every country would have their national debt clock. And people get the feeling that this is a representation of how much money we, the people, owe the government. So it's like all of this debt is being created. But if we actually look at how money was even created to begin with, we can start to pick apart that theory because originally money was backed by gold, but it's not backed by gold anymore. It got swapped out, right? So what happens is the government issue bonds to the bank. The bank then create money based on those bonds, right? And those bonds form the asset, and then the money that is created is then the liability, right? So it is a debt. It's assets and liabilities, right? It's debits and credits. All the money then is created through debt. We're in a debt-based system, a debt-based economy. The banks then loan that debt out and it gets fractionalized. You can take $10 and loan it out 10 times, right? And this is how the banks make money. When you borrow money for the bank, people think like the bank is lending you their money. They're actually not lending you their money, they're lending you your money. That money then goes out into the economy, right? That goes out into the economy. The economy then operates, right? Trade, commerce, right? And then we report on our income taxes, our revenue, and then we pay taxes on it. And then the revenue departments or the ATO over here report that revenue as income of the nation. That income then is what is attributed to the nation's GDP, right? So essentially, then that GDP or the nation's financials is then what creates the value of the economy. Then, based on the value, the equity in the economy, the human resources, right? How powerful and how strong our economy is, it can then borrow against the asset of that human resource again and create more debt. Essentially, we are the asset. The people in the economy are the asset. It's the human resource. So natural resources are the most valuable resources. But what the governments have so cleverly done is they've created this system where they are using human resources to make money. The power of the economy is what creates the government's ability to then lend, right? Create bonds backed by the human resource, backed by the credit, our resource that then gives it to the banks. The banks create the money. The cycle just keeps going round and round and round. So when I learned all of this and when I uncovered it, like it wasn't, I didn't find a report that told me this. No one told me this. It was literally from looking at all the different audit reports, the Commonwealth reports, Commonwealth of Australia reports, the financial reports. They release their annual budget. The annual budget is absolute bollocks. If you look at the annual budget and then you look at the appropriation bills, because every budget allocation has to have legislation, it has to be legislated. You then look at the appropriation bills because then that's what's appropriated to each government department. And then you can break down those agencies and departments and see how much money they actually got and then what they actually spent. And then you can literally pull it apart. And every time I looked into all these different accounting reports and all these different government agencies and departments, I was like, man, the math just ain't math. What the hell's going on here? We should be a very efficient economy. We should have resource rich solutions. We are so productive. It's ridiculous. But why are we in much inflation right now? Why is the price of everything going so up and the quality is reducing? It just doesn't make sense. And I was like, I then just put all the research down and goes, well, the math ain't mathing. If we know that we live in a debt-based economy and money is backed by debt, you've got two worlds. You've got the living and you've got the dead. Debt is dead. It's living. It's deceased. It's lost at sea. It's all those truther, sovereign, things that people say. That's true. So I just say, I don't like to invest in the dead. I like to invest in the living. Money in your bank account, a lot of people, especially in the conscious spiritual spaces, they're like outsourcing their power to money. They're like, I just need to vibrate at the same frequency of money, or I just need to treat money better, or I just need to align myself to the highest vibration of money, manifest money. Woo! And I kind of say, you're still putting money on this pedestal like it's outside of you. You're still outsourcing your power to dollars in the bank when dollars in the bank is just dead. It doesn't really exist. What I like to teach is that we're the energy, right? So we're the human resource. Human resources, that is an energy, and it's scientific as well as spiritual. It's also emotional and deeply personal. So we all have energy, and that energy has a charge, right? The energy moves through us. We have a charge, and based on our energetic frequency and that charge, we can do things in the world. People who are high frequency, high vibration, they have high charge. And it doesn't mean that they don't dip and have low frequencies. They move very quickly, right? So they can do a lot. And then people who are low frequency, low vibration, it's not that they don't have highs, they absolutely do, but it's just slower, right? And they don't have the charge to do as much. And that's why they might be depressed and they might sleep and lounge around. They just don't have the energy because they're low frequency, low vibration. When you look at your energy and what you put out in the world and the value that you bring to the world, you do that through time, right? So you could be in a 9 to 5 job and you are swapping time for money. Or it could be your resources, right? So it's your knowledge, your skills. You go to work, you're using knowledge, you're using skills, and then you're getting money for that. And then we grow in that evolutionary journey of business out of employment into freelancing, out of freelancing into business ownership, and then out of business ownership into entrepreneurship, where you got multiple streams of income. I just look at your energetic value is all those streams of income that you've got out in the world through your businesses that create positive change and impact for other humans, whether that is resources, products, services, education, health. There's so many different things that people can do in the world. And when you apply your skills, your knowledge, your time, your attention, and your heart, and your care and your compassion and your leadership, this increases your energetic value. And then what happens is money is the byproduct, right? Money in the bank account is the byproduct of the energetic value that you put out in the world. And it's not to say that this is where we detach. Oh, I've only got $100 in the bank, so I don't have any value. No, 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 that is not true. We all have infinite value. We just haven't accessed it, right? So you got $100 in a bank doesn't mean you're not worthy or you're not valuable. It just means your energetic output in this world right now is not delivering the results that you desire. That's where you look at, well, what's my energetic output? Where am I at? What am I doing? Am I slaving to the man? Am I unhappy in my relationships? Am I showing up for my children? Am I like, what work am I doing in this world? We got to start asking these questions, because if you want more money in the bank, this will be a surefire way to bring it in through integrity, through truth, through the value of who you truly are. This is why so many people feel like something's missing in their life. And it might be they want to go and find out this information about money, or then they'll do this course and then they'll try that thing and they'll try it for a little bit, and then the hot air will kind of die out and they revert back to, they're like, oh, that didn't work. Let's move on to the next thing. And I'm just not about that. I'm like, let's move on to your thing, because everyone's got a thing. Everyone does. And no one person is better than another person. We're all doing it together. We're all part of the collective whole. We've all got a seat at the table. We're all needed. You've just got to find your uniqueness.
And
And
do you
when you,
agree
yeah,
that as people are like you're trying on the things, do you agree that sometimes you have to try on several different things until you find your
absolutely.
thing?
Absolutely right. I've tried on things where I've just gone, holy moly, that is way not my thing, right? I don't reject or I don't condemn myself for trying it, because I was like, oh, what actually attracted me to that thing? Because maybe this is what attracted me there. And then I got there and I learned, I didn't use the thing, but I learned something else. And I learned that maybe I will do the opposite. And that's okay, because that's part of your soul growth. Like, there's no right or wrong, right? You can try something and it'll work, great. And you can try something and it won't work. But guess what? It doesn't mean you failed. It means you've learned. You now know what doesn't work for you. I just love sharing and I love empowering people to know that you're the source. You're the source of the currency. Where you spend your time, your energy, your attention, where you put your skills, your passions, like you are the power. You are. And your whole life, you have been outsourcing your power to other people. And it's hard. I admit it. It is very, very hard. And I can see in my bankruptcy process, it took me losing absolutely, well, what I thought, losing absolutely everything, but I regained so much. I found myself. I started making decisions for myself. I started getting hungry for answers. And then the life that I've created for myself off the back of that, like I couldn't have even imagined. I couldn't have even my small little insignificant brain back then couldn't have possibly imagined the beautiful life that I have now. Because it was so inconceivable. But I just trusted that every step of the way, as long as I just followed the little signals or the little messages or wherever I felt guided, that internal guidance, but I think people ignore it. They ignore it and they keep ignoring it, and then you'll get knocked, and that knock will be like, oh, ow, hurt. And then you've got a choice. Well, do you keep ignoring it because you might get knocked again, and this time it might be a little bit harder? And how long are you going to ignore that little niggle until one time the Mack truck comes and completely obliterates your whole life? You know? I think I had a few knocks and I never listened. I didn't have the capacity to. I needed that Mack truck.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we could go so deep on any number of ways with this, but before we cut off, I want you to share what your biggest piece of advice, being the Abbey now, knowing what you know, for somebody to go out and create a life of financial independence.
Don't listen to anybody who is not where you want to be. Right? Because that's the thing that holds people back. It's the naysayers, the critics, it's the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, it's the limitations when we think other people have, oh, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or you're not going to be able to do that. Don't listen to that. That is like the system testing you. Because if you listen and act according to the program in your current reality of all the people telling you the things that you can't do and you shouldn't do, then you're going to keep living the same life. You have to be bold. You have to make the decision for yourself. You have to back yourself. And it might sound crazy. Like when I first created the spiritual account, I was laughed at. I had professionals saying, no one is going to take you seriously, Abby. People don't take spiritual people seriously. No one's going to take you seriously. I was like, I don't care. This is my path. This is the way I'm going. And I've seen all the steps along the way. Like I've come under massive, massive attacks or criticisms, or let's call it manifestations of the equal and opposite of my light, right? So that catapults you. It's not something to be afraid of. Use it as your power. When someone says you can't, you say, I can.
Mm.
And that's when you back yourself because they don't know you. You know you. No
I
one
love
else
that.
knows you as best as you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a coach tell me, no, you can't have a podcast about manifestation and money. I was like, you know what? I'm going to create a
Why?
podcast about manifestation and money because those are the two things that I love to talk about. So I'm going to go do me.
Wow. Yeah. I guess it's just, people have their own paradigms, right? They have their own paradigms, their own prejudices, they have their own belief structures, right? So when you take on that information and you act according to outside of yourself, you're just reiterating other people's stories, right? So we've got to create our own story. And we've got to write our own book. We've got to write our own future. And when you just keep cycling the same past, just rinse and repeat, and then people keep, oh, you can't do that, or your friends might go, oh, you're a weirdo, or you won't be successful doing that. No one can do that, or everyone's a manifestation coach. You're not going to be successful because the market is flooded. Like, it's all BS. It's actually all BS because you can be whatever you want to be. You just have to believe it. You have to believe that it's true and act according.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is the perfect note to end it on. It's like the perfect permission slip you're giving people today. Where can people reach out and connect with you and carry on this conversation?
First of all, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to share, and thank you for giving me the platform, and thank you everyone for listening. But if you want to find more of me, I am over on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Untethered, so you can request to join. I share a lot of truth about the system and taxes, and then I also love to empower businesses and new earth leaders to step into that leadership that's really needed right now. You can find me over there.
Perfect. I will link that in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Abby.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. I really appreciate it.